my audio, but hi,
Okay.
I
Hi.
did
Yeah.
it.
Are you on your audio?
I think I am. Can you hear
I think.
me?
Yeah. Well, I can hear you. Yeah. Welcome,
Yeah,
everybody. We're
welcome.
just finishing up a little bit of the technical aspects of the show.
We love tech. I love tech. It's one of those things that I have to put stickers everywhere to really convince myself that I do, even though I know I'm lying to myself.
Make sure you plug in.
I do love tech. I just don't love figuring it out.
Putting it together.
All of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Using it, great.
Yeah. We love it when it works, right?
Yeah.
And then it's always a big challenge about, all right, now what have I done? What have I done?
What have I not done?
Or
Why is it not working?
yeah. Or what have I not done? Yes,
Well,
for sure.
anyway, now that you can hear me loud and clear, hello.
Yes. Hello,
Good to see you.
Fati. Yeah, good to see you too, and everybody else that's joining us at this moment or in the future. How has now? Okay, so how has been your week?
Okay, the reason why Rick, okay, just like full disclosure here, the reason why Rick, I am assuming, but I think it's a good guess, the reason he was hesitating is because he probably knew what I was going to answer because he already asked me this question. And my answer was, I had a really rough week because, as usual, life just prepares me for this conversation. So we were going to talk about doing the work. I had to do the work, just as, as late as a couple hours ago.
So if your hair is out of sorts or whatever, yeah.
This is the magic of makeup and fixing your hair. You can achieve this in 15, 20 minutes. It took a little longer today.
It took me all day to get mine just right. It just won't lay down.
That's amazing that you don't have to deal with any of that.
I just thanks, Joanne, for joining us today. And yes, you are here. Yeah, no, I just keep washing my gray away, except for down here. I just, but I did brush it out and kind of groomed it up a little bit.
Yeah, it looks nice and neat.
Yeah, thank you. So so we've had a bit of a contrast of weeks because I've been riding what I've been calling this week riding the rails, and I'm not sure if I shared my analogy about railroad tracks, but I might have at our show last week.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, so I've been really on the rails, and floating along like yeah. Has things come up? Of course, things have come up. It's life, right? Things always come up. Are they conspiring against me? I don't know.
I love that analogy of the rails. I think you should give it again. And I'm just going to premise that my experience of the rails this week was a lot of like,
I get you.
On the curves, like just hitting all the curves.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you want to get? Sure.
Yeah, just share it again because I think it's a beautiful analogy, and it may have gotten lost in a wonderful conversation that we had with Dominic.
Yes, that was wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. And lots of people joined us and watched the recordings afterwards. So if you're just hearing this for the first time, just go back to our last week's episode and have a listen. There was a lot of insight and aha moments from Dominic. It was a wonderful conversation and light.
A lot of aha moments, and maybe we can do it. Like I wonder if we should do an episode where we kind of like reflect on what's been talked about.
Oh, like the best stuff.
Yeah, because I had a lot of revelations, but I also perhaps places where I feel like, not that I feel I have a different point of view, but where I feel like I can see how certain things can be challenged or misinterpreted or misunderstood, right? And so I always feel the need to just really go back and kind of take it apart for people so that they truly understand, because I think in self-development, sometimes there are many misunderstandings, right? And many seemingly conflicting messages. And it's more about the way people are like receiving it or interpreting it than the actual message being contradictory, if that makes any sense.
And and people need to get clarity, right?
Because people need to get clarity, and it is confusing. So I want to make sure that I say that sometimes it does get confusing, even for me. And then I really sit with it and I think about it, and then I really realize the thought behind the thought, if that makes any sense. And so I think it would be good to kind of deconstruct the conversation from last week, because it's a big one, manifestation and thoughts becoming things. That's really at the base of everything that we always talk about. And the way he was expressing it and putting it out there is a little different than the way we talk about it, right? Because we each just express things through our own understanding of it, our own experience of it, right? Our own way of filtering it through, right? Which may or may not resonate, right? So I always want to make sure that our audience understands things, in the way that we are able to portray it and, help them kind of like pull it apart.
Well, anyway, and that's the importance of questions, right? Is that if you have a gap in understanding, we should always, like, I always go back to Stephen Covey's in the 7 Habits. Seek first to understand, like seek that understanding, be curious about, okay, well, I'm not quite getting it. Okay, well, let's explore that part, right? Because that's, if in the absence of information, we love to make up shit and fill in the gaps.
Yeah, we always fill in the gaps since
exactly, because we want that gap filled, right?
To the level of our understanding that moment, which, as a parent is such an important thing to grasp, right? To the level of understanding of our children in that moment. And how often like thoughts are like so much simpler. The way they interpret things, it always comes back to them, because the world is very simple. It's them, the people that they love, and nothing else matters, right? So
sure. So thanks, Adina, for joining us, and Jan, good to see you.
Hello, welcome everyone.
Yes, and so we were just talking about our week. So
let's get into it.
Well,
I'm feeling fiery.
Well, yes. Well, Fati, you asked me about my analogy, and I'd love to. I've repeated it several times in different other workshops, but it's becoming a lot more clear as I live the experience of what I'm terminating or talking about riding the rails, and it's like a railroad track. If you just envision what a railroad track is, and it's a set parameter, right? But what makes it work is they're called trucks, where the wheels of the train, the car that sits on, are called trucks. And the wheels themselves are enlarged. They don't fit perfectly on the rails. They're actually quite wider than the rails. But what keeps them on track are the flanges. And to keep it in the tracks, it has to hit these flanges. So it's constantly going back and forth, adjusting itself naturally to, hi Angela, to the rhythm of the rails, sort of, if you want to call it that. So when it hits the side of the rails, there's friction. and sparks and all sorts of other different things. If it's the first time you've ever been on a train and you're experiencing this kind of rockin', hitting friction thing, you would naturally think that there might be something wrong, and want to do something about it or have some fear about it. And if you felt like, because of this rub and friction that's happening, I need to do something right in this moment, and you find that either you can't, or when you try to, it seems to become worse, there's a fear that you might derail. But when you truly understand the nature of what the system was designed for, it's designed that it hits the side of the rails. It's designed to provide a little friction, which tells the car, okay, you need to readjust, or you're going around a curve. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't, if we don't add any more meaning to the friction, when we let go of trying to control the train so it's always in the middle, we can relax and let the design of the system do what it's supposed to do. And I can sit back when I notice the friction, and this is part of my work, is when I notice the friction, I just know, oh, that's just the design of the system. That's just it letting me know there's something up, right? Do I need to do anything about it? No. I can relax and I can enjoy the ride. So rather than focusing on the friction, I can now focus on the journey. I can focus on what's going by. I can look at the different scenery. And at some point, if it occurs to me that I should get off at this particular station, I get off at this station. I get off at this station because I want to get off at the station, not that I need to get off. I want to, whatever. So for me, it's always been, when you understand the metaphor and understand how the mind works, you understand that life is about touching the rails, right?
And sometimes hitting the curves.
And hitting the curves. And
those long curves that just go on for a while. Right? You feel a little out of balance for a while, right? So that was my morning.
Yeah. So that kind of brings us up to what we were kind of talking about, because we often point to in our conversations about this thing called the work. Like, what is the work? And anytime somebody mentions work, it's like we're talking like hard stuff or work or sweating and grinding and
it is hard stuff.
Well,
what are you talking about?
Well, it can be, right?
It can be, yeah.
Right. It can be anything. It could be a fun experience. It could be, riding the rails in the sense of.
Well, what I like to, the analogy that I like to make on this is, it's not this like sweating and like, it's the same thing for your mind though. Your mind is sweating, is putting in the reps, and your mind is enjoying the bicycle ride or feeling a little fatigued, right? So it's a gym for your mind, pretty much, right? For your emotions, the inner work, everything that comes from the inside and, manifests on the outside of ourselves, right? So our emotions, our feelings are, just how we're experiencing life on the inside and in our mind, the way our mind makes meaning of things and creates distress or a feeling of fulfillment or happiness, right? Like, it's all in here, right? And so it's very much, the work is very much about working out the inner part of ourselves.
Absolutely.
The way I see it. Yeah.
No, and that's a really big distinction, because at one level of understanding, and I was there too, was I looked at my outside circumstances that they needed to be worked on. I needed to adjust how my environment was to somehow make me feel better, not realizing that it had nothing to do with the environment. It had everything to do with my thinking about that environment. So as that level changed, the environment naturally changed. It was sort of like, it's like, wow, like, when did that happen? And it was like, it's always been there. Kind of, you have a new set of eyes.
It's always been responding
to
you. It's always been reflecting back, right? Yeah. So what is it reflecting back, right? Yeah. It's reflecting back what's coming from the inside. And if you don't like what you see on the outside, then the way to go fix it is to go fix what's inside, what you believe about yourself and the world, and like in what your experience of life is depends very much on what you believe about yourself, pretty much, right?
Yeah, pretty much. You're the conditioned self. The conditioned self.
The conditioned self, right? So if you believe it, you're right. You are it. If you don't believe it, you're right as well. You're not it, right? Like whatever you believe is what is. And I know that is, and this is such a difficult shift to make, right? Frankly, to go from victim to owning it, right? And I know we debated whether or not the word taking responsibility was appropriate, or it felt a little bit blamey. So let's say we'll take ownership and control, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So going from I can't do anything about it because I'm the victim, it's being done to me, to oh no, I'm going to own my own, and I'm going to take control because it's my own, right? Yeah. And what I can do about this situation, or what I don't like, and how can I change it, right? So going from it's done to me to I'm going to own what I don't like and change it, right? And it's not an easy mindset shift to make. And even when you do make it, just listen carefully, you still fall for it.
At
you
occasion.
Still fall for it.
Absolutely.
Occasionally. Yes.
Yeah.
Occasionally.
And because, part of that is part of the design, right? Part of the design is survival. So
of course,
my understanding of the ego is its mechanism works on automatic. So one of the things it doesn't trust in us is being able to, look at what's happening in front of us and make quick decisions. So what we see in front of us, if it's a saber-toothed tiger, it's like danger. We need to run. We need to do something about it. The problem with that part of our brain is it doesn't see reality as clearly as what it's making up. So it's either going to be operating from memory, or it's going to be looking through reality. So there's always this check and balance that we have an opportunity to look at from a point of view, like Byron Katie says in her the work and doing the work, is asking ourselves the truth. Is this the truth or not the truth? Am I seeing it for what it actually is, or is this just part of my story or part of my makeup or projecting?
Which, by the way, it always is. I'm going to interrupt us for 1 second, and I'm going to do something that's going to give us much more clarity. Sorry, everyone.
Were you having blemishes?
I forgot to do this. My children love to put their fingers on the camera. And do you see how much clearer it is now, the point of view?
Maybe I should.
I was like, why am I looking all hazy? Oh, yeah, I see some big fingerprints there. Anyway, some grease too.
But that's a perfect. I love that analogy. I always love that analogy because I use this, right? Mm-hmm. Because when part of recognizing. So first of all, I have 3 parts. The first part is you need to be aware of that you want to change. Like there's something there that says to you, you know what? I want something different. I want. You're aware of a need for a change. Mm-hmm. The second part, and we've talked about this in private and other areas, is the desire to actually desire to participate.
The motivation and the desire, yes.
In the work, to participate in the work, right? And then it's through insight, through conversations, and through your own life experience, you have insight, which gains your knowledge and level of understanding increases. Then you start to see what the work actually does. But it's really about bringing clarity, right? Because you have this conditioned self that has a very, very narrow point of view, and it doesn't give you the breadth of possibility and enough clarity to really truly see a situation the way it really is. It feels very real that's the way it is. That's part of the illusion. That's part of
it feels very real. And I want to say, because I think this is where people really, really get triggered. Mm-hmm. It is real because it is real to you, right?
It's real
and
to
it
you.
Is valid.
Yes.
And it is a voice that comes from a very deep, deep, deep place called our inner child, right? That's where it all comes from. Mm-hmm. So it is very real to her, to him, right? And it's not to be dismissed, and it's not to be bypassed, and it's not to be like ignored, right? Because I will tell you in a minute what happens when you do, because I did that. I still fall for this too, right? I understand all of this, like we were just talking about. Sometimes you do fall back into victim, and you don't really actually realize it until you do. You're like, oh my God, I'm back in it. I got sucked in again.
Just that quick. Just that quick.
The difference though is you get out of it that much quicker. You know what to do to get out of it. So the other important thing is to not feel bad because you're there. To be very understanding, to always look back at that little girl, that little boy that needed to just come out and just feel heard and just cry and just play the role that it has always played, right? Okay. It just wants to be seen, and sometimes it's going to come out. And so instead of being resentful or like upset, and like starting to kind of really feed the analytical mind that's going to tell you, oh, see, this stuff doesn't work because you're falling into this again. Just really understand that, no, this is your opportunity to be compassionate towards yourself, to understand that being human, there's nothing that says that we must be perfect. Being human is about having all these faults and falling and touching and hitting the rails and staying in it sometimes, right? Well, not realizing it, right?
The quote from I forget which book he wrote, he talked about it in one of his lectures, but Sid Banks said life is a contact sport. And when I heard that, immediately you think of, you need your knocks and hits and all that other kind of stuff. But I started to realize, particularly playing with this analogy of the rails, is that you need that contact, or else you don't know where you are. Right?
It's the way it's meant to work. Again, nothing says that life should just be like a breeze, because that's kind of boring, frankly.
Well,
people that seemingly have that, they have other things that they're dealing with on the inside. I can assure you that. No one has like a life that's like a straight line where everything is perfect, right? There's always, because we're not here to just live in perfection. We're here to learn, right?
Why do people go to these amusement parks?
To feel what it really is like.
They go for that in the now experience, right? The fear, and knowing full, like they understand, oh, it's all make believe and it's all kind of like the jungle ride. I don't really have any control over the boat or anything. But it's interesting. They come through it going, oh my God, what a ride. Wasn't that great? Let's just do it again. Right? Like
it's a contrast, right?
You're in full contact.
Yeah, you're in full contact. And also, if life was always a straight line, how would you know when it sucks?
Well,
you wouldn't have that context.
And it would be boring. It would be boring. Yeah. It would be the teacup ride, or not the teacup ride, whatever that, we we actually seem to thrive more when we're participating fully in life. So for me, part of the work, and if you're going to get an idea that there isn't a script, but part of the work is noticing when I'm not participating and get myself back into the game, right? And again, getting back into, it's just the rubs, it's just the friction, it's just, it has nothing to do with reality or my victim, my playing the victim. It's just part of life, and I can enjoy the ride a little bit more, right? And at the end of the day, if I can come out of this going, holy moly, what a ride that was, and, because really all we have is the dash, right?
For sure. And at the same time, there's going to be moments where it's not going to be just the nudge. Right? It's not going to be just a nudge, and it's going to be like hitting those rails hard, and it's going to feel super uncomfortable and upsetting. Tragedies do happen in life, right? Difficult situations are real, right? We're not saying that they're not. And I think that when we do hit those really rough curves, that is where actually we need to put a little bit more weight, to counter that and do the work in a more powerful way in redirecting our thinking. And really, truthfully, all that we need to do beyond what we would normally do is let those feelings express. Because we're going to have feelings about it. We're going to get upset. We're going to be triggered. The inner child is always going to get triggered, right? And we're going to just have moments where we're not at our best. We're going to have moments where it's going to feel like doom and gloom and dark and like nothing is working out. I was just in it. So it's very fresh. Like I said, my life always prepares me for these conversations. And when you're in it, it's very, very real. It's very real. It feels real. You believe it. You're feeling it. You're feeling the sadness all over your body. You're feeling the anger, whatever the feeling is. And guess what? The only way to change that, there's two options you have. You keep sitting in it and you just feed it and you keep getting, guess what? Like Dominic was saying last week, don't worry, it's going to get worse. I love that. It is going to get worse, right? So that's one option. You're just going to stay in it. It's going to get worse. Stay in it and it's going to get worse. Or you're going to let it express. Just surrender to it. Let the tears come out. Let the anger come out. Remove all judgment. Just let it express. I would like to share how I do that. There's many different ways that you can do that. Obviously, the ways that it's going to come out if you don't do that is you go snap at the person that crosses the street, or the guy that just is not going fast enough in the car, or the person that, happens to be at the wrong place in the wrong time and you're just snappy and angry, right? So it's either going to come out like that, or you can do this in the safety and privacy of your home. Sit down and cry, record yourself while you scream, put 2 chairs in front of you and have the conversation that you want to have out loud. You cannot keep things just in here because thoughts just kind of blend together in our heads. But when we express them through language and we hear it back, and now we're kind of hearing what's being said from it, we're getting a little bit of an observer's view when we hear ourselves, right? And now we're processing things differently. And even more, if you want to take it a step further, which I always do, because I love to be hardcore with this.
Let's not go to this step. Let's go to this one.
Oh, yeah, let's go to this and just like really push beyond the bounds of your own limits, right? I record myself. Do I want to be recorded in that moment? Not necessarily. Let me tell you, not fun, not something that I resisted for a minute or two. And then I'm like, okay, just do it. You can always just delete it. And I always do, by the way, after a while I delete it. I may watch it once or twice. But you record it. And the reason why I'm saying record yourself is because what is really powerful about that is the ability to watch it back. because now you're truly in the observer's seat. And now you're hearing things and seeing things and noticing things in a way that you wouldn't when you're in it, when you're expressing it, when you're feeling it. Certainly not when you're just keeping it all to yourself and feeling feelings of shame and, anger towards yourself and why am I. Express it. I feel ashamed that I'm having a crappy day today. And I didn't want to use the S word, but that's really what was coming to mind first, right? Just say it. I feel like a fraud today. I feel, whatever it is that you're feeling, I feel like a cheater, whatever it is that you're feeling. No one has to hear it. It's between you, yourself, and you.
Yep.
Just do it and, give it a try. That's a really good way to really go full on that next level of expression. You can, again, and I think we have talked about this before, like emotional release, like punching pillows, physical exercise, going for a run, nature walk, meditation. But any of those tools, they work differently per person, right? Depending on who you are and what works for you. And also depending on what's triggering. Are you sad? Are you mad? Are you anxious? Are you, upset? Are you resentful? Then based on that, the expression of those feelings may vary, right? If you're really sad or, like you're feeling like critical of yourself, it may be very different if you're very angry towards someone or something, right? You may not want to go punch a pillow that day, but if you're very angry at something or someone, that may be a good activity to do. Again, no one has to see it. And I see Rick just raising his eyebrows.
No.
Envisioning that.
From my coaching point of view, I guess you have to find you in the work. Yeah. Right? You have to find you in the work. And there are many paths on the journey that get you kind of in where you are. Some people really like meditation. Some people like this. You get a huge amount of value out of that, which it really reminds me of, anytime you've had a really quite an extensive experience of something, an intense experience, and because of it, you want to share it with somebody. The minute that you try and describe what just happened to you, what do you experience? Right?
It goes down.
Well, it's not quite the same. It's just, you got to be there, right? That's exactly what it is. You have to be there.
You're expressing it, yes.
Because now all best you can do is provide some detail, right? And some kind of, evocation of emotion through your speaking. You go to the doctor, you've been having this pain all this time. You finally go to the doctor and the doctor says, "What's wrong with you?" "Well, I had this pain." It's like, but when I'm there, when you're in that moment, it's sort of like, well, where did it go? So for me, it's always pointing towards the fact that that thought is transient. When we learn, whatever way you want to learn, to release it. It wants to be expressed. It wants to be. And the more, it's like for me, it's like the ships, right? The ships will always be floating by, and every once in a while, something's going to catch my attention, and to the point where it comes closer, and then I have an inspection, and then I want to analyze it, and then I want to do something about it, and all this other stuff. Well, that's happening. The rest of the world's going by me.
Yeah, and it's very, very true. It's like, it's such a individual experience, right? Yes. So you're so right. You have to choose what works for you. And by the way, I don't record myself every time I'm upset.
No,
I do it when I'm really, really upset, which I clearly was.
I'd be running out of memory.
Yeah, well, you can erase it. But I use all of them, actually. Actually, one that I haven't mentioned is release writing, like writing things down. So let's say you receive an email that's really triggering to you, and you type your response, and you're really angry, you really want to hit send. Just save it. save it to draft, give it a minute, type it again, go fix it in your drafts. If you don't trust yourself, put it in your notes and then copy and paste later. Every time I do this, inevitably, sometimes I have to wait. It's just that one time, and then I can write the email that's like gonna get my point across without all of the noise, right? Sometimes I have to wait a couple of days, depending on what it is, right? But inevitably, the email or the message I end up sending back is strikingly different than the first one I had typed, right? But the reason for that is that while you write your angry response, you're releasing. That's release writing. It's like, just let it all out, no filter. Don't think about the best way to say it. Just say it as is, right? If writing is your way of communication, that's a really good way to do it. And it's the same thing for when you speak to a chair, like speak it out loud, just no filters.
And I would suggest that you actually put a box or something that hides the send key. so that...
Trust me, I learned that the hard way.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
I just go to my notes now. I don't do the reply. I go to my notes. Sometimes I remove the sender.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that's going through a divorce for you people.
But but all those are part of it, right? So it's really about, part of the work is in the act of noticing, right? Being that observer, knowing when you're in the muck, knowing when, you don't have clarity, right? So and then it's like, okay, like it's out for me. It's a little like a simple stop, drop, and roll. And I've used this as a fire where if you cut yourself on fire, you stop, drop, roll out, put the flames out. But I've noticed this and I've practiced this, and it's a practice, right? This is a practice, just like any skill. Like when I go for my walks, I consciously notice where my thoughts are going. Am my thoughts on the trail? Am I listening to what's happening? The birds, the trees? Am I seeing the colors of the flowers? Right? And then all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh, geez, I got an appointment at Tuesday. I wonder if I'm going to be able to make it. By the way, it's Sunday. Right? Again, that's part of noticing, oh, I'm not being present. Because the more present you are, the more clarity you have. And part of being present is exactly what you're pointing to, is when you release that, the act of doing that is a very present moment activity.
Well, and it's also the only way you're actually going to be able to do the work. Let's just get into that, because this is part of doing the work is the release, right? Because for as long as you're triggered, for as long as you're reactive, you're not seeing clearly. And if you record yourself only once, even when you're not very angry, you'll know what I'm talking about. You're not seeing clearly. You're not going to be able to resolve anything, come up with any solutions, or feel empowered, right? No. Or do the work. You're not going to be able to do anything because you're engaged in the fight or flight system. Exactly.
You're shaking your snow globe. That's all you're doing.
Yeah. So why we really stress the releasing the emotions and the expressing them is because that is your gateway to doing the work, to actually doing the work that is going to. I'm gonna have that. I felt like it was gonna hit my forehead.
Sorry.
It's okay. I needed to see that today. But yeah, it's like, unless you do this part of it, you're not going to be able to get to the actual work that's going to be useful and help you grow and get out and see the learning. You're not going to see any of that. You're going to be like, fuck that, right?
Yep.
I am angry. This is not happening, right? So, and I'm telling you, but if you're the type of person that tends to shove it under the rug, put it away, and I'm not that type of person, but I did that recently, I admit it, and that's why I had my awakening today. You put it away because you just don't have time for it, guess what? It's going to get worse. the knock is going to get harder and harder and harder and harder until you cannot. It will affect your entire day. It will affect your mood. It will come out of every pore, right? So the expressing part is basically the premise to the work, right? To now knowing, well, where do I need to go look, and what do I need to do about this? Where do I need to like understand this or see this in a different way, right? What can I do about it, right? So
it's almost like I've been pointing in this direction for such a long time, and it's like, okay, I need to kind of
look this way. You cannot turn that way until you have the ability to admit that, right?
You have to release this side. Yeah. You have to release that, right? There's almost like the death of the caterpillar before it becomes a butterfly, right? It's sort of it has to happen. And like the laws of physics, no two thoughts, no two ideas, no two emotions can occupy the same space until one is released. Right?
Yeah, you cannot be happy and sad at the same time.
Pretty hard.
You do alternate between them.
You could, but not at the same time. Yeah, exactly. So it's part, and that's for me, that's always been the biggest part. Like if any, is that deeper understanding of the mechanism of how the system is actually working helps me understand and enables me to sort of release earlier, right? Because I know that's where it is, because I know I'm caught in overthinking. I'm overdoing something that's causing it, right? That's providing the less clarity. So part of the biggest step, and where I see the biggest transformation in clients, is that initial noticing of how it's all kind of working and how it's unfolding, and what we do after that can go in another various ways. But I don't know what your experience about that is, but I think that seems to be the biggest fundamental step in the beginning of any transformation.
Yeah, I would say that you and I are fundamentally very much the same and very much different in certain aspects, right? Like I think we have different temperaments, right? So sometimes I feel like the noticing is not necessarily that obvious, right? And that again is because fight or flight is very loud. So reactiveness, if you're someone who had, trauma in your life, you had a certain type of childhood where you always had to like protect yourself, or if you're in it now, it doesn't just have to be in your childhood. It could be a situation that triggers that, like wanting to defend yourself or like protect yourself, right? If you're in that fight or flight, sometimes just saying, let me just notice, you're not noticing anything. Let me tell you, you're going to start noticing the moment that you release what's causing the reactiveness, right? So often is a fear, right? Let it express, let it out. And then now you can notice. Now I can actually notice I'm in it, right? The moment you start releasing, and it doesn't have to be a full release, you're like, yeah, I'm in it. Those alarm bells, it wasn't just telling me to go fight for my life. It was just telling me I got stuff that I need to release, right? Yep. 9 times out of 10, that's what it is. Unless you're getting hit by a truck, that's what it is, right?
Totally. And
so it's in that moment where you find where like the bubbles have come out, the pressure is off a little bit, then now you can notice. Now you can be calmer in your mind and actually, you feel acknowledged. You have acknowledged yourself in the validity of your feelings, right? And now you can think about the situation, right? And notice and go into. But some people are gifted to have, they have the gift of having a very like, like a milder temperament. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah, no.
And just go there, right? We're all different. But if you're like me, that you react and you're like fiery, and you're just like you need a little more time to settle down, then don't worry, you will notice the moment that you slow down.
Well, and
to the speed of Rick.
To the speed of Rick.
The moment that you slow down to the speed of Rick, then you start noticing. I love that. That's going to be a new tagline. Slow down to the speed of Rick.
But I think we get caught up in language a little bit too sometimes. And when I'm referring to the initial, like I'm talking about the levels of consciousness. So when I'm consciously aware that I'm in, because there's a lot of times I'll be in the victim mode, right? I'll be going into, this has to, it's when I'm consciously catch myself, right? So the only way I can catch myself is to notice, it's just another word, become aware of that I am at one level. I'm at that level. The minute I notice that I'm caught up, that's when my consciousness level changes, right? So I immediately, in using the acronym, the stop, drop, and roll, I stop what I'm doing because something has made me aware of. I've hit the side of the rail, and now I drop whatever was holding me there. I release it. I release and let it go. And now I can see more clearly, okay, what might be the next step? What should I be doing? And it could be, I need to go for a walk. I need to write this out. I need to, and not send it. Whatever occurs to you in that moment, because I have a bit of clarity now. Before, I'm stuck at the ceiling. And when I become consciously aware of I'm there, then, like what you're pointing to is, yes, you start to notice the clarity. You start to notice some things differently. That's changed. There's something changing. And at that moment, that's when you can start doing some more of whatever, we want to call the work. Yeah.
I mean, I have to say, for me, is like both of those experiences, right? Depending on the level of, what I'm going through, how much I'm triggered, or, like the level of fight or flight response, let's call it, right? In some people that's stronger than others, right?
Yeah.
And that's when, like Joe Dispenza would say, that's when the body becomes the mind, right? Takes control of you, right? And I do notice that I know when I'm in it, because obviously I have a lot of awareness around this, doing this work. I know that I'm in it, but in that moment, what my analytical mind is telling me is prevailing, right?
Yes.
And I can slightly separate myself from it, but I'm still in it. The body is still the mind, right? Yeah. And for me, yes, it's not as simple to just notice and it drops down. Yeah, it drops down that I realize, I see what you're saying. It drops down because I realize that I'm in it, right? I realize that I'm in it, but sometimes it's still so strong that I really need to it's not going to be like, I'm in it, I'm going to go for a walk. No, I'm typing, I'm reacting, right? Sure. I'm in it and I'm still doing this. F this, F that. I'm not doing this. Not today. Today I'm going to react. And today I'm going to be angry. And today they're going to hear from me 100%. There are moments I'm just like, all of this work is just a bunch of bull, right? And then I know that it's just my mind tricking me into it, but it feels so good to say it in that moment and to feel that way. It's that addiction that Dispenza speaks to so well, right? Like we're addicted to our habitual being, right?
Oh, totally.
Breaking the habit of yourself. Yeah. What an amazing name, right? Yeah. It is breaking the habit of being yourself, the addiction to what we know, the addiction to all the things that keep us in the bounds and the limits that we have set for ourselves, right? Where we're addicted to feeling like our habitual selves, right?
Yeah.
And it shows up, and sometimes it just it feels so good to take that. It's kind of like the person that smokes and just wants that little drag, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna let myself have it, be in this for a minute, misbehave.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't serve you.
No.
And then, because it always going to give you the same results you've always gotten. And, it doesn't work. You go there for a minute, you get hit in the face, and you come back.
Yeah. Yeah. And and continuing from that point is the other layers. It's the other peeling back of, and part of what I call the practice of, right? So when you're in it, you know that, you recognize it, and then it's a release. You're in it, and it's a release, and it's a, it's a constant up and down, like, and as you get more comfortable with that, then you start to find that there's a lot of sweet spots in the journey. There's a lot more comfortableness in the journey. It doesn't mean that any of that's going away, because life is a contact sport. So it's not going to, but you can finesse it a lot better. Like when the traffic is going a lot slower than you want it to, you can sort of go, okay, I can release that one.
What can I listen to?
What can I listen to? Or,
right?
Oh, wow, I didn't notice that building there. Like, when did they build that? Kind of a thing.
Well, that's real bad traffic if you can notice the building.
Well, I was on a walk one day with a client, and sometimes I like to do little walks, and I'm going, when did they put this statue here? And he says, it's been there for about, I don't know, 5 years. It's like, but when you're in your head, you're not in your life. You're either in your head or in your life.
Well,
when you're in your life, you start to notice more. That's all.
Well, I would argue with you that we're always in our life, because our life is our experience of it. We're not in this, like solid 3-dimensional.
Right? I agree with you.
Right.
I agree. Yeah.
But yeah, I really love what you pointed to right now in terms of, so let's take me, the one extreme, and let's take Rick, the more evolved, right? And I'm not saying that that's what it is. I'm not saying that in any way that that's what it is.
No.
I just want to make, create an example out of it. Let's say that you're always reacting, that's what you always do, which, by the way, it's not what I always do. Okay.
Let's be clear.
Yes. I just have, I just had a really rough patch, and there's reasons for it. But let's say that you're someone who is always reacting. And by the way, in my previous life, I was always reacting, right? So the old me, right? And then now you're at the place where Rick is, right? Where he can just sit back, let it drop, and get up and go for that walk, right? Going from me to him is going to get easier and easier and easier as you do this, right? So the old me would get triggered. Let's say I would get triggered 100 times a day. I slowly walked my way to maybe I get triggered once every few months, the way I did today, right?
Yeah.
And that's a big, 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 big step, right? But it didn't happen overnight. And it only was possible because of continuing to do this work, continuing to notice,
exploring the inside out.
Remaining curious, right? Like releasing it, doing the work, releasing it. And then with a curious mind, just going in and looking at where we need to look at, what do we need to work on, and asking more powerful questions than just, why me? Why does this stuff always happen to me? Why is the world all against me?
Exactly. Right? The universe is not empowering. Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes it does feel like it's ganging up. It does, and I felt that way. I'm going to say it flat out. I felt that way, right? And it's like, you know what? I may just not be that important.
What?
to this greater intelligence just be like so focused on me.
Out of all the 7 billion people in this world.
well, people and all the other beings, and like, right? Yeah, it's like maybe he, she, the energy, the universe, whatever it is not just all against me. It does feel like it sometimes, though, right? And that's okay, and that's okay, and it's okay to get mad at it, and it's okay to feel that you're the center of the universe. Absolutely. That's fine.
That's right. Yeah, and that's part of that whole deal. Like I love anybody that's ever read, or you can actually look her up too. But Byron Katie does a lot of what she I think her podcast is called The Work too. But it really is, when you get down to the clarity level, it's really about understanding, who you really are, how it works, and then asking powerful questions. And one of the powerful questions I like to ask is it true? Is it true? And if it's not true, then what? Right? So if I'm moving forward on something and there's something getting in the way, it's like, well, I'm whatever it is, I'm not good enough, or I don't think I have the skills. Like, is it really true? And you have an opportunity to explore something different, right? Something that what, I used to always just stop right there. Well, what would happen if you didn't stop right there? What would happen if you took the next step? I guarantee you your head won't explode. But that's part of doing the work, is exploring for yourself the what if. What if I actually took that next step? What would happen? Like,
what if I owned this?
Yes.
What if I owned it? What if I owned my part, even if I cannot see?
Yeah.
What could possibly be my part in this? Because guess what? It's not just about owning it and feeling that you're blaming yourself. It's not about blaming yourself. It's the more you own, the more you control. By the way.
It's okay.
Okay.
It's just a test.
It's just a test. Okay. Testing us.
Well, it's we have this early warning device thing. Wouldn't that be interesting?
I have it too. Yeah, it has happened to me too. Actually recently when there was that shooting in the subway, my phone started going crazy. Yeah, it's scared.
But there's a good analogy, because we have a built-in defense mechanism like that. We have and that's part of why the rails are there, right? It's like an early warning detection system that says, "Hey, wait a minute, like, pay attention, just pay attention," right? So it just, I got a funny story. I know we're running out of time, but I watched a video of a friend of mine.
Rick.
Yeah, this time. Okay. That's another episode. He's in Tahiti. No, I'm mispronouncing it. I want to say. Anyways, he's out in the South Pacific there, and they have crosswalks, and everything's kind of in French. And when you listen to this crosswalk, it tells you, it says, "Oh shit, don't go."
I love
it. And I'm thinking, wouldn't we have something similar in there that sort of says, "Oh shit, don't do that," kind of a thing.
It's so true.
Yeah. So
it's in the form of discomfort in your body, in your emotions.
Yes.
You get it always is either, it's always nudging you one way or another. It's always like warning you of something. And sometimes, and most times, the warning that you see is in the terms of like, I need to keep myself safe, like fight or flight, like you engage the fight or flight, when really the message is a lot gentler than that.
Yeah.
It's just that we're reacting to it.
Yeah.
We're just like protecting ourselves and our lives, right? But like part of really doing the work is to consistently like bringing yourself back to this, and like remaining curious and really like doing this inner work of putting yourself out on the table, emptying your bag and really looking at all these different pieces. How do they fit together? And you know what? And I know that sometimes we talk about this, it sounds really easy because obviously this is what we do. But if you cannot do it yourself, there are many great programs out there that guide you through doing the work and what